Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto, and we were talking about this before. The correct technical term is a Brady Bunch. We have a Brady Bunch of analysts that are on our Zoom call with us today that we're chatting about CES 2026. This will be the discussion that puts CES 2026 hopefully to bed, unless other news and other things pop up from there. But I would like to have everybody who's on the call introduce themselves and tell us who they are, what they do, and then we'll go around and start talking about impressions and what we should have all taken away from the show. But Avi, you're on my screen first with some pretty heavy glasses for you. Tell us about yourself.
So I'm Avi Greengart. I am the lead analyst at Techsponential. I cover end user and consumer tech, so including heavy duty glasses from Meta and all the competitors that were out at CES.
Thank you, Avi. Doug?
Doug Mohney. I'm editor-in-chief for Fiber Forward magazine and longtime CES attendee. So,
thank you, Doug. Tim?
My name is Tim Albright, and I cover the Pro AV space and UC space. Primary audience is IT and AV decision makers for AV Nation.
Tim, and I will be seeing you in Barcelona in a couple of weeks. And Deborah, finally yourself.
Yes, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of CoreSight Research. We sit at the intersection of the consumer and technology. So we look at enterprise tech and startups and really focusing on this kind of, I would say, user-friendly and the, kind of also as well, the enterprise space as well.
Terrific. So Deborah, since we're on you, let's start with you. What would you, overall, very high level, 30,000 foot view, whatever other cliche you want me to use, what was your takeaway from CES this year?
Completely different than I thought it was going to be. Typically what I find I come out with is like you have a lot of the tech companies throwing darts at each other, and it's more kind of like trying to pull apart what the true information insights are. I will say, besides having an unbelievable amount of opportunity to spend with the chip companies, right, either one-on-one or in small group settings, that the event at the Sphere, to me, right, having all four CEOs on the same stage and really starting to see how they are all kind of moving into their own areas of expertise. And then to have that really, to me, right, like whipped cream cherry on top, however you want to look at it. Thursday morning, we did a private booth tour at Intel. And it was funny, one of my good friends at Intel is like, it's just a bunch of laptops, right? Like, I don't need to build this up. So I only invited, right, like a small group of people. It truly, I mean, David, I've never had one of those kind of moments. And if I have, it's been a long time where, right, Intel is developing their own software now so that, right, and to see that and to experiencing and to also see what everybody else was thinking. I will say, right, and like GPU, CPU on a single chip, right, like pre-orders at levels that they hadn't expected. It was this kind of, I think from like the inside out, right, to have the chip companies leaving so much of the intelligent conversation, that was, and like it just kept going and building. That was kind of my, wow, I haven't seen this before kind of insight.
Okay. Tim, your high level?
Oh, high level. The best part for me were the side smaller shows, the Pepcoms, the Showstoppers, and the like. The show floor itself was a whole lot of AI in places it didn't need to be. I used the term AI drunk several times that week. And Deborah's right. The Intel stuff was very intriguing. There were absolutely a handful of small sparkling areas, bright lights, if you will, but both in the Venetian and in the LVC. But my overarching impression was there's a whole lot of stuff here that we don't need, want, or desire.
Very fair. What about you, Doug?
I think two observations. I think one is the continued trend of CES to get into big metal and enterprise. Caterpillar, Siemens, John Deere, Oshkosh are all hyping or rolling in AI into their big metal. So that was kind of cool. I think from a what's going on perspective, I think that there were fewer press events on Monday than in previous years. There was an app, in previous years, you kind of had to figure out, well, I need to go here, 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 and you're just running from conference to conference. And this year, I was just sitting around and going, there's nothing going on. And I think also from a smaller scale, what's going on perspective, in previous years, you'd walk out in the front of the Las Vegas Convention Center and you'd see Chalet World, where everybody had a bunch of their own dedicated buildings. And this year, I think NXT maybe had a chalet and the food trucks, and that was about it. There was a definite absence of presence in the parking lot in front of the Las Vegas Convention Center. So I know some of the vendors have shifted to indoor events or events offsite, such as Samsung, and those generated their own issues.
Absolutely. Avi?
Yeah, I mean there were at least two shows going on at the same time. So there were fewer press conferences at the Mandalay Bay, but my day was spent, that entire day was spent shuttling from press event to private event to press event, just not at the Mandalay Bay. Similarly, there was nothing in the parking lot. Well, that's because every single one of the new and refurbished halls was in use. So we saw a lot of the companies that used to be outside were just inside because they could get booth space, or as Doug pointed out, they moved offsite entirely. So Samsung was at the Wynn. I spent my entire show at either suites at the Venetian or suites at the Wynn and walking back and forth among them. I spent very little time on the show floor. So as Tim pointed out, that made the events like PepCom more valuable because they sort of concentrate companies that you might not be able to get to on the show floor in one place. But the other part of the two shows was there was this outer show where people were showing off AI gadgets, whether they were AI gadgets that live on your desk or in a robot, or on your face. Or I have one that I was wearing at the show that I picked up at the show that did life logging and sort of used AI at the end of it to make a little cartoon of what my day was like. Huge privacy problems, but also kind of delightful. But then the other part of the show was, if you go to all those backroom meetings, it's all, okay, so in the front space, the forward-facing space, we're talking about all these new gadgets and these new chipsets and these new laptops and these new AI features. How are we going to do this when we can't get memory? So that was the other, that was what was going on behind the scenes was, we're sort of facing a shortage here. And so there were lots of discussions around, are we going to pull back on configurations? Are we going to raise prices? Are we going to try to manage it, different supply chains, all that sort of thing. So absolutely amazing show from a business development perspective on my end. Lots of great conversations, but very interesting. The dichotomy between what was on the show floor and what was not on the show floor.
I want to jump. Can I jump in really quickly? I think Avi said something that was mission critical around supply chain. So as someone who used to lead the think tank for the largest supply chain company, we've never heard really much at all about supply chain at CES. And for Lenovo to talk about that, for literally every chip company to talk about that, to me, says a lot. And it was interesting. I was meeting with Intel at NRF, and so they were like, where do you think we should lean into? And I said, I think supply chain. And somebody who was sitting with me was like, no, that's a 3 to 5 year thing. And they're like, that's probably like an 18-month thing. So if you think about, we can start to solve companies' biggest problems and save them money in a space that's incredibly expensive. And that can be done with a lot of the companies who are at CES. I think we're going into a very interesting supply chain cycle. And what that means, ultimately, we'll see. But once again, to hear about a topic there over and over and over again that I've never heard, like I said, it was such a different CES in such an interesting way for me.
So let me indulge myself as the host of whatever this thing is, and start spitballing some ideas and some things that I started to feel at the show, and get your thoughts, all of you, and just jump in as appropriate. The first one is I couldn't get past the feeling this year that, and forgive my blatant language, I'm too old for this shit. It started to, you know. Many past years, I would want to hit every section in the hall. I'd want to look under every rock and under every cover. And Avi, as you pointed out, everybody had a different experience. You know, they were talking about 140,000 attendees, and I would probably guess there are 100,000 different experiences because, you know, you walk into a place that you didn't expect to be what it was or where it was, and all of a sudden you're experiencing a different show. We all went up, or a lot of us went up to the Foundry area, and all of a sudden they've got another conference going on over there with the folks from NVIDIA. And if you happen to walk over with Samsung, you know, you're of two minds with Samsung. One, it stinks that they've pulled themselves off the show because you have to make a special trip. But on the other hand, I don't remember having elbow room in a Samsung booth at any show ever anymore. So, you know, so that's the first thing is like, I did not see as much of the show as I thought I should have. And I was there with a whole bunch of friends, and I saw all of you guys there. And what everybody kept saying is, you saw enough, you did enough, you accomplished everything on your goals. And I have to be satisfied with that. But I think I'm getting too old for this stuff. Am I the only one having that feeling about how we've missed so much and it's just hard to get around?
Well, Lenovo had their own little show too at the Sphere.
Yeah.
Actually very, very well done. But it was its own little mini conference.
Yeah, and I wanted to go to the Lenovo conference, and I was invited to it, and then I was uninvited because for some reason, since I didn't register with their CES,
Oh, yeah.
they sent me a "you're uninvited" note, and I said, "Are you guys out of your mind?" And then they said, "Oops, sorry, our bad. You're still invited." But I didn't go because I wasn't going to attend anything that I could see on a stream later on. If I could see it
the
and
experience
download,
was
Yeah. I'm with
yeah,
Avi.
well,
this was
not
the
my
first.
first trip to the Sphere.
There were two Sphere experiences this year at CES that actually showed what the Sphere is capable of. One was Lenovo, where they gave high level messages. They didn't go too deep into the millions of products they were launching, and they used just spectacular visuals. The other was the Lego Group, which used the Sphere as a giant Lego Death Star and invited a bunch of journalists to play a Lego Star Wars game using this Sphere as the screen, which is just wild, while they launched an interactive Lego brick.
But again, I saw that. You know, it's not something that I missed. I was able, maybe I didn't get the whole, you know, 360 Sphere experience, which I've had way too many times at this point. But yeah, I get that. So anybody else with the feeling that the show's possibly a little too large?
So it's interesting. I'm in all these WhatsApp groups, and everybody will share, this is what I'm doing today, and this is what I'm starting. And so I think all of us, especially being media press analysts, right? You start at like 8 a.m., right? Like first things, you don't want to miss out anything. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to do this get started at 11 or 1 p.m. And so I think because you really tapped into something, David, that I thought a lot about, which is when everything is so kind of all over the place, right? That you kind of almost give yourself a break and you're like, I'm going to do what I can do. But I don't need to be like this super person today. I'm going to focus really narrowly and come out with, you know, some key takeaways. I'm not going to be able to do everything. So I think there was a change, at least for the people I spent time with, and how they looked at their time. And because there was so much that was new and different, right? Even if you just made it to one spot or one event, your takeaways were, I think, exponential versus prior years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would throw in another side show or another different type of show, and that's the briefing rooms. You know, the suites up and down. You know, the Venetian and the Palazzo. I mean, those at least for us and what we cover, those tended to be a little bit more deeper and better content coming out than getting a briefing on the show floor. Again, because you're right, the elbow room, the difficulty of hearing and being able to get content out of folks. Plus, in those rooms, they were a little bit more free with the information. You know, that may have been embargoed by a week or two or whatever. But that tended to be, you know, a little bit better experience, at least for us and what we were trying to get out of CES.
A lot of vendors. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Doug, go.
Now, I was just going to say I'm still sorting through. I mean, I don't think this year I didn't get as much out of it as I thought I would, just because I was going off site and then back on site, back and forth for a couple of different events. Um, I'm still processing, to be honest.
Processing.
I came home and I'm looking through my pictures and notes and I'm going, oh yeah, I did go to this event, or oh yeah, I did go talk to this vendor. And I still have I
Sure.
still have information that I need to review. And it's been like, a week. So.
Doug, was there anything like I found for myself, right? Like I have notes in a note-taking system. I have video, I have pictures, right? Like also like my information myself is kind of in many different verticals. How did you kind of keep yourself organized and as you're going through everything, is there something that you would do differently next year?
Um, well, maybe AI will fix my problem. I need an AI to go through my photos and sort them into appropriate categories. Which is one thing. I think the other thing is, I also do audio recording. So, that usually gives me a, better grasp of, what was said, and rather than me trying to take notes, just forget it. I'm too old.
Let's use that as a segue to talk about AI just for a second and what happened at the show, because there were a number of products that I saw on the show floor. Claude was one of them. Trans AI Note was another. I had to remember the name. There are these devices that are trying to be bridges between humans and AI, and I've written about that, where it's giving you processing and context in a way that it hadn't done before. Claude records up to the cloud. The note-taking one does it all on the machine, so there's no cloud involved. This is one of the Vasco translators. If we're going to show up, I have to unplug it, which now has a camera on it, which now does, not just multiple simultaneous translation, but it'll do context. What does that dish mean culturally to the folks that are in this area? What does that sign mean, and where should I go? So these are things that could be apps on your smartphone, but a lot of people don't want to sacrifice their smartphone to meeting recording and to traveling around and translating. So I did see a lot of those bridge devices. Some of them were ridiculous. Some of them were purely AI washing, but I did start to see AI embedded in a lot of things where it could improve. And I assume you guys saw that kind of stuff around the show floor as well.
Oh yeah. The Plod has been around for a little while. They announced the Plod Notepin S at the show. They sent me one ahead of the show. I actually took it to the show. Used it a couple times. It's great for taking notes unobtrusively without getting distracted by your phone, among other things. And the AI summaries that it generates afterwards are really, really good. That Lukey life logging thing was interesting. I think it has a great application for Disneyland, and I'm not sure for much else, but maybe they should just rent them. The other thing that I saw that I thought was most intriguing was this AI pin that Motorola was showing off as part of Lenovo's new Kira AI cross-device initiative. And one of the things that we're seeing is that if you're going to use AI effectively, it needs to understand context. And so, Meta and Google are both coming up with glasses that have cameras on them, and then you can ask it to look at things. But that's just essentially what this pendant is designed to do. So, the use cases for this are, never lose anything ever again. It will, if you allow it to track what you're doing in your life. It can see where you put your keys down, and it will remember it even if you can't. So there are really good use cases for some of these devices, and then there are the AI companions that sit on your desk and sort of annoy you. I saw both.
Well, interesting, and I'm going to continue throwing these contexts out at you so you guys can comment on them. We saw a note in the news the last few days about Meta firing its metaverse staff. And it didn't come out quite exactly that way, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me. But do you remember, of course you remember, how hot Metaverse was at CES about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's gone. And, a lot of that was just presumptive meta washing, and now we've got a lot of presumptive AI washing, and how much of this is real. And we had Dell come out at the show in conversation saying that, you know what? Talking about our stuff as AI PCs isn't working. They said the quiet part out loud. And they went into the idea that, we're going to start talking about design and battery life and form factor and capabilities, because if we say AI, it's just going to blend into the noise floor. And that was a stunning admission. Like I said, the quiet part out loud, that a lot of companies like Microsoft and a lot of other firms that are playing in this AI space need to hear, because people aren't, their ears are closed. As soon as you say AI now, they've essentially clicked and changed the channel. So have you seen some of that reaction when you guys were walking at the show?
They've clicked and changed the channel, or they've opened up their wallets, and that is the problem, right? It is you've got the vast majority of the consumers who click and change the channel, but you have investors who open up their wallets every day. You can't get funding unless you have AI. Is what I've been told by some founders, is that is a huge problem right now, in the market, as well as different rounds of funding. So, but you're right. You've got a lot of noise around AI, but it's not connecting with the people who actually purchase this stuff and make those decisions.
I think there's a lot of questions, Tim, around security when it comes to AI. So
Yep.
we found, going back, we had an executive team with us, and we bumped into David as luck would have it, because David, right before we saw you, we've been talking about the security of some of these, devices like Plot, et cetera. And so I think this idea that you can kind of like record your day, that you can have this, kind of memory maker, if you will, but are things stored locally, or is it in a cloud? So there was a company that we met. Actually, I wouldn't have expected them to be at LVCC, because it was one of these devices called ZenCord. It's not sold in the US yet, but everything was stored locally. And I think more and more, right, when it comes to AI, we're hearing a lot more about security than we have in the past.
Yeah, and this is the one that I mentioned before that I had run into, which is these guys that are creating a device where the AI is all in the chip internally. It never goes to the cloud unless you want it to.
I think that that's important, because a lot of people who are pushing AI, especially for recording live events, are pushing for a service and repeating revenue rather than, and locking you into their ecosystem rather than a standalone device. And then just to circle back to Deborah's point about what I want for Christmas, in terms of being able to sort things out, give me something simple where I can talk to my phone, and as I'm taking a picture, I can put a tag on it. So when I go back to my desk, I can sort out by tags and have everything go into different buckets. That's very simple. It's very important. You use AI building blocks to do that, and that would be a very quick sell to me versus the laundry list of stuff that I'm hearing today.
Yeah, well, just after CES, Apple broke news that it's going to be using Gemini to build its own new foundation models that will go into an enhanced Siri that was promised a while ago, but okay. But to Deborah's point, a lot of that processing is going to happen on device or in Apple's extremely specific configuration of cloud computing. So there may be a privacy angle to that isn't on some of the other products, and we'll see how that shakes out. But that wasn't at Apple doesn't directly go to CES, but the big fruit logo is almost always hovering in the background like the sphere.
But
So let's take a pause for a second, Deborah, before you do that, because I see we've been joined by Jim Harris, who didn't get a chance to introduce himself, and he's late. So you obviously want to call out the late guy, but why don't you take a 30 seconds to introduce yourself, Jim, because you were at the show as well.
Hey, David, I am so sorry to be late. I am a business book author, published in 80 countries, focus on AI disruption, innovation. #1 international bestseller. One of my books hit the #1 slot on the Financial Times of London's business book list. And my real job is I speak at conferences and seminars all around the world on AI, disruption, and innovation. And I go to CES.
You'll be able to join into the conversation as appropriate, Jim. I have faith in you. Although you look like, not personally, but with the background, you look like Burgess Meredith on the Twilight Zone, surrounded by the book. So, Deborah, you were about to make a point, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think Avi brought up something fantastic, which was people I was sitting near at the Sphere, once again, more analysts. Everyone's like, we bought a Fruit logoed laptop over the holidays. Maybe everyone was literally checking if they were in the return window. Because the idea is like, we should probably be buying a Lenovo based on what we've seen. And that was a real, right, this idea of moving more to like Android PCs, I will tell you that was and going back to what Intel said about, right, the pre-sales of their laptop with their new kind of chip, right, which has a GPU and CPU in one, I think we're going to see, going back once again to what Avi said, a lot of these failed promises, people are like, let me move on.
Okay. So Avi and I had our typical annual conversation about the benefits and drawbacks of smart glasses, but I did want to use the opportunity to call out at least one firm that I saw, and you guys can think about things that you saw and want to call out as well. But there were these guys, eSight, which you may or may not have heard of. But what they do is one of the things that I most admire when I see at the show. They're not a big company. They haven't rented the Sphere. They're barely at any of the other events. The folks at Uproar did a really good job highlighting them, and the folks at Uproar did a really good job standing out a little more this year than they did in the past with their setup. But what these people are doing is they're putting essentially AR glasses on people's heads of people who have only peripheral vision, real eyesight issues where they can't see in front of them, and they're using the technology to fix that problem, to augment, to take a camera that's facing forward and process it and provide it into the peripheral vision that they still have. That's using technology to improve life in a way that I think is really outstanding. And you want to call out companies that are doing that, and there's a lot of historical research around how eyesight works. I forget the name of the person who did the original experiment very long time ago, where if somebody wore upside down glasses for long enough, that becomes their visual processing and they adapt to it. So the people that can then essentially adapt to visually processing from only their peripheral vision, God bless companies for doing things like that. So that was one of my big standouts from this year, amongst others. Anybody else have a product they want to call out that they saw, or a company that they were really impressed with?
I just want to jump on you on that and just amplify that accessibility is the best use of technology. I met with those guys in previous years. I met with them this year. They found that people were using their glasses much more than they were expecting, and so they've invested in making them last longer so you can wear them for longer. So yeah, kudos to them. There are also companies doing AI smart canes, for visually impaired, that can tell you give you a description of the environment that you're in. That can be very helpful. So yeah, I'll shut up when it comes. I talk enough, but yeah, I just thought that was worth amplifying.
Avi, there was a number of others, both at Showstoppers and at PepCom.
And Eureka Park.
Floor, there were a number of exoskeletons helping people that either were fully disabled from the waist down or had severe limitations, and they were demonstrating this. And this is, again, the best use of technology is helping out folks. This was amazing to me, and it's something they've been working on for, I know, at least 10, 15 years. But they're getting to a point where they're comfortable enough and they're ready to bring it to market.
I think
I would Tim, there were a lot of those were fly-by-night Chinese companies who are using the same tech and are all sort of pitching this at lazy people. So there was one specific German company. You're not wrong, but what I saw at CES was a lot more of the, hey, we've got this. We've got this exoskeleton. Now, you can, the exoskeletons for use in enterprise situations where you're reducing healthcare costs, really, reducing labor problems because people keep getting hurt. That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely, when it comes to helping people who can't walk or have difficulty walking and are being used for accessibility, great stuff. But a lot of the ones that I saw at CES were really sketchy.
Jim, just jump in. Go ahead.
So two things just on this conversation. If you're on the production line doing riveting on the Ford production line, you will lift your arms 1 million times a year, and you can put on an exoskeleton and adjust the weight so the 10-pound drill and the weight of your arm is perfectly offset, so it's like lifting a feather, and you don't get these repetitive strain injuries. So to what Avi was saying. But the most exciting product for me was something called Coro, C-O-R-O. It's an Irish company, and this is going to sound wild to get into it, but it's for new mothers to put over their breast when they're breastfeeding. It's the size of a contact lens, and it has a hole at the tip, and it measures exactly the flow of milk to the baby, and it can go on right and left breast. And why is this important? Because best medical advice says that a new mother should feed 6 times for 60 minutes per day. But the data from CoroFlow has shown that the vast majority, like more than 85% of the milk, comes in the first 10 minutes. And if new mothers knew they only had to feed for 10 minutes 6 times a day, they would feed beyond the minimum 6-month recommendation. And that extra time means more immunity for the baby. And paradoxically, like I didn't know this, less uterine cancer for the mother. Like, go figure. So, new mothers would breastfeed longer if they didn't feel there was this 6-hour-a-day imposition on them. So I was, and it's the first ever accurate monitor. So for me, this was kind of cool.
Yeah, Jim and I were together when we met them, but what was interesting to me is they are approved in Europe. It's been longer in the US, and I found that there are more companies that are already being used in Europe and other parts of the world versus the US, and some of the companies were having challenges getting, let's just say getting US approval, FDA, et cetera, what it might be. And so that I felt that was interesting because I've usually heard, right, we've got US approval but not Europe versus the other way around.
EU is usually easier to get approval for medical devices. Well, I shouldn't say usually, but I've heard that story as well, where it's harder to get approval in the US for like medical apps. David, I'll throw down my cards. Let's talk about something boring, batteries. Solid state batteries are, there was a Finnish company called Donut Lab that's making a solid state battery that recharges in 5 minutes, 400 mumble per kilogram. Solid state doesn't use, cheaper than lithium, better performance than lithium over a wide range of temperatures. If
Let's hope safer.
Yes, safer. Well, it's solid state, so you
Much
basically
safer,
put
yeah.
you can put a nail through it and it doesn't burst out into flames. So that it's got better safety as well. These Finnish guys from Donut Labs, either they're pulling a scam or they're going to be changing the world. And because the world is built on lithium chemistry right now, moving to solid state chemistry, which doesn't require lithium, doesn't require other rare elements. If you can produce those batteries cheaper. And the other thing too that Donut Labs was hyping or promoting was that they're talking about a recharge cycle of about 100,000 times. So in essence, you buy a car and the battery's going to last longer than the car. So Donut Labs like, oh yeah, you're going to turn in your car and we're going to take out the batteries and we're sticking it in a new car. That's how good these batteries are. So they're starting production right now to support their electric motorcycle, which is going on sale in the States in a couple of months. If these guys deliver the batteries that they say they're going to, it's going to change. It's going to change the world.
Terrific. All right, so let's change course a little bit here. We talked about some of our hidden gem highlights. Let's talk about some of our lowlights, without calling out anything specific or being insulting. One of mine, which I won't let you guys comment on, you can if you want, is we went. This was a very stretched out show this year. And when I walked into the South Hall upper, it was gated. It was closed. That means that all of the Chinese manufacturing companies that used to be there were not there this year. And it also means we probably didn't need to be in the West Hall. And I know we're in the West Hall because it's cheaper to operate and everything else. But that was one of the downsides in terms of logistics and organization. In addition to which, this was, Karen Chupka is no longer, she now does NAB. She's not with CES. But I had warned her years ago that when they were doing the press events at Mandalay Bay and they were going to have football games on Sunday and press day on Sunday, that was going to be a conflict. And this is one of the years where you couldn't get into Mandalay Bay because there was streets closed all around it. So that was one of the lights. The other one I want to mention, and I'll let you guys comment on yours and on any of these as well. Tim, you probably remember this better than most of the other, although Jim might remember as well. The enterprise communication space and the AV space, we generally on April Fool's Day have companies that put out joke videos about a product they might be making. And one of them a few years ago, I don't remember which year and I don't remember which company did it, was a full mask that would cover your face so that you could have privacy phone calls and nobody would know what was going on. And they did a whole 5-minute video on how you'd be able to have this conversation with your ears, with your covering your face. And somebody came out with that as a product this year. And I honestly didn't speak to the company. I saw them at Unveil. The company's name was Veeam, and the product name was Wearphone. And I took pictures of it. I was afraid to talk to them. I don't know if they even got the fact that it was a joke, and if they were just kind of trying to, rip off the design like any other manufacturer does. So I had to call that out. That was a weird one.
They were part of Jetro. So it was like literally one of the first, that was like the 1 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah.
And there was another company that was there, Clay, QLAY. And the idea was that they were going to help you. I mean, it was interesting what the problem they were trying to solve. I'm not sure about how they were trying to solve it, but that they were going to help proctor interviews and, and tests and stuff. But the consumer had to kind of download this software and put the phone so that it was watching them. And I'm like, I just don't that didn't, I actually went to visit them at, I think it was Showstoppers because I wanted to get more information. And I'm like, it's not exactly how it came across. This is why you need to visit these companies multiple times to kind of get the full story. But I was like, this idea that you could start to see, right, if somebody's, you're interviewing has got kind of like a little window that's popping up with an AI recommendation on how to answer you. But the actual kind of, let's just say, and there was a hardware component and a software component, which just seemed way too complex. I like the idea, I like the insight, but I don't know if they've solved for it yet, but they're on the path. And so I agree with you, David. There were problems that companies were trying to solve. I'm just not sure about the way they were trying to solve them.
Well, and I already said mine a little bit at the very beginning. I thought that AI, that the show was AI drunk.
I'm stealing that.
I steal it all away. I think it is apropos of that show. I'll give you one real quick example. I think David, you said something about the robots, and there was robots everywhere. There was robots trying to fold laundry, and I say trying to fold laundry because they were taking a rectangle and trying to make a smaller rectangle, and they couldn't figure that out. And this is what I gathered from there. The hardware part of the robot's done, right? They look slick. The mechanicals are there. They're robust. At least they look robust. They didn't let us, touch and feel them. The software's not there. And it almost feels like they vibe coded the software, right? It's like, oh crap, it's December 30th and this isn't done. Quick, throw some code in there and just kind of make it do something. I started the day on Tuesday at LG's booth, and God love the poor gentleman who was trying to do the demo. You could see the light drain from his eyes as the robot refused to do what it was supposed to do, and what I am certain it did all day Monday in the run-throughs. It just didn't do it Tuesday morning.
I think it's like, I've had enough of this. I'm
Yes.
AGI. I don't want to do it anymore.
A
Yes.
robot uprising. Where's Will Smith when you need him? I have this rule at all trade shows that I go to, and I go to a lot compared to most people, that if I can't walk past the time it takes me to walk past your booth, so smaller booths, shorter, bigger booths, longer time, if I can't figure out what you're trying to show me, I'm not stopping. I
Sure.
saw a robot arm holding a bag over a plate of, I think it was apples of some sort of produce. And I couldn't figure out what they were trying to demonstrate. Was it the fact that it could pick up the apple without crushing it, and then it just dropped it onto the plate, certainly not in the bag. I don't know what it was. I still don't. That's somebody who spent a lot of money to demonstrate something, and their message didn't get across to me. So, and everybody has their fans, so I'm sure there are people that went to that booth, but it was weird.
So
Any other big gems? Go ahead.
My low light was loud and clear because it was written in very, very large letters around some of the products that I actually thought were excellent over at Samsung. So Samsung has a new refrigerator that's got an inventory management system built in, which can track how well your eggs are selling to your household, to tell you to replenish. I thought that was great. There are a lot of other things around that were great. But the notion that they pitched over and over again was that these are home companions. That is not a job I am hiring my dishwasher to do. I do not need my washing machine to be my home companion.
Avi, I think your home is going to be, I took away from Samsung this idea of the home health hub, that your home is going to be spying on you. And if you eat too many eggs, or if you eat too much chocolate, or if you sit down for too long, that it will be kind of noting that to whomever. So I will say I walked away. There were a few things I walked away that I would put in the big check mark of the creep factor, and that was one of them.
Yeah, that was the looky thing that I was wearing. Not only was it privacy destroying for everyone around you, but it also was also tracking what I was eating incorrectly and nagging me. Like you're at a bar, don't drink. First of all, I don't drink. I was at a bar meeting with the CEO of company X, because that's what you do at CES. Shut up.
And Avi, I will augment your concept about the Samsung refrigerators. A friend of mine, an ex-colleague that I used to work with at Poly, when Poly was a good company, Jonathan Grover, wrote a wonderful piece online a couple of days ago where he was talking about, let's celebrate technology that still works. And one of the things that he was celebrating was the handle on the refrigerator. Why are we using technology to figure out how to open a refrigerator door when the handle has functioned correctly for centuries?
Yeah.
And the one or two times your arms might be full and you don't realize that's the reason you have counters in the kitchen to put something down to open the refrigerator. So again, and I've talked about this actually in seriousness over the years. You used to have to go through checks and balances to bring a product to market. You used to have to go to bankers or investors or a chairman or somebody to go through and bring something to market. And now with private funding and Kickstarter and all those other sites, you can bring any stupid thing to market, and the market eventually decides whether or not it's useful or not. So we did see a bunch of those gems.
I want to jump in on why security is so important. Some people think, oh, do I really need really good security for my refrigerator? To what Avi and Deborah were talking about. And the answer is yes, because if I haven't opened the refrigerator in 3 weeks, you can hack in, I'm on holiday and it's a good time to break into your house. So I even need good security on a refrigerator that's counting my drinks that I'm not having.
Or a launching point. It can be a place where, you break in and that's how you get to the rest of the system. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
I think it was at last year's CES that Samsung said they're going to be supporting their refrigerators with security updates for 7 years. So I think that's about 3 years shorter than people expect their refrigerators to last. But at least they are acknowledging the problem. And I don't have a problem with a lot of what Samsung was showing for their appliances. I actually think the inventory management system was a clever idea. My issue was that they really were pitching this as your dryer is going to be your friend, and
Yeah, we'll be
I
talking to you
love
while you're
that.
watching TV. Yeah, I get that. To put a cap on the refrigerator stories, our refrigerator, which was a Samsung, died during the pandemic, and we had to replace it with the model. And we were lucky; we bought an LG model, which was good, and it was one that made the craft ice. And I said, I saw that at the LG press conference years ago. When I moved into this house 35 years ago, the refrigerator that we had in the kitchen, which is now in the basement, still works. And I didn't think it would be enough for a homeowner in suburban New Jersey. So I went out on Craigslist and for $25 bought one of the GE Harvest Gold refrigerators that I had growing up. And it's still in the basement working without a problem. It's only the new ones that die every 2 years.
Of course it is. That said, there's so much tech in that refrigerator that Samsung launched that this was the first time I'm thinking I may actually ask for an appliance as a review unit.
There you go.
Interesting.
Does it have a NVIDIA chip in it?
No, it has Samsung Exynos in it.
There's got to be some inversion of GPU that involves ice, but I got to think about that later. All right, one more topic I want to throw at everybody quickly before we start to do our conclusions and wrap ups in the last couple of minutes here. I used to watch, observe, look out for televisions and displays at CES. It was one of the big reasons I went. Obviously, I use them in a career that I'm in. I place them in conference rooms and big locations. They have now dropped a bomb on any kind of terminology. Are we talking about LED, micro LED? Are we talking about OLED or OLED? Or are we talking about direct view or side lighting, or micro this and micro that? So I've given up even trying to figure out apples to apples for these things. And I don't know if I'm the only one. If you guys, and there's only like 3 factories making the glass in the world right now. So is it something that everybody else has started to back away from a little bit?
No.
Okay. That's fair.
I saw, like, some of the new technology, the RGB, what was it?
The mini RGB.
I think it is the term. Doesn't make sense at smaller sizes, and we saw some smaller sizes because the whole point of that technology is that OLED would be better if you could afford an OLED in those ginormous sizes. But when you get to 115 inch sizes, that's very, very interesting. You get just spectacularly deep color. But OLED has gotten really good, specifically at the show. LG's, was it G7, G6, whatever the version of the new OLED that they just announced, it's visually easily better than last year's, which was already extremely good. It's just the highlights have gotten much brighter, and with good HDR content, I that's another one where I'm probably gonna buy one.
There was a company called AWOL, like literally all caps AWOL, and they had an RGB laser UST projector. And so this idea that now it was incredibly heavy as opposed to a lot of what we saw with the TVs, but this whole idea of having kind of a true like second screen, I thought was really interesting, and just the quality at the cost. And so I think that it's, let's say, a derivation of the TV idea, but maybe, in smaller spaces, et cetera, what you can do and what you can see. So if you live in an apartment like I do, you don't need to have, right, all of this space available. But when you want to have friends over, when you want to see something, there is an alternative.
Yeah, Deborah, the micro projector, the Pico projector market is thriving. All of them from China, but for that very market of small space, big screen, portable, take it on vacation, whatever.
I got this one last year, the Arzen, and it's just an enormous, wonderful.
Yeah, I got one of them too.
But this year they gave me the case that they never shipped.
I didn't get the case.
I got to ask for it. You get more stuff than I do anyway, Avi. Anyone else have anything that stood out for them before we start talking about big message we took away from the show and wrap it up?
Better living through software upgrades. Several vendors were talking about adding more features by shipping software upgrades. When Bosch is talking about, oh yes, you can add air frying to our latest oven, it's like, oh, okay, I see where we're going here.
Yeah, we saw that Tesla has done away with the one-time purchase for their automatic driving. You now have to subscribe to it. We've seen other companies talk about how, they're not offering their subscriptions anymore, and that's one of the problems that I have with the subscription model and the software model from a lot of the companies that we saw at CES, which is you're not just committing to continue to buy something over and over again, which I despise, but you're counting on them to maintain their servers. And should the company make a decision that they're not doing it anymore, like I can't use my Facebook portal. If anybody wants it, just send me an email and with a shipping label, and I'll send it to you, because it's not supported anymore. Neither is, the Sony Dash or any of the other earlier products, because they don't feel like supporting the servers.
Well,
and that bothers me.
I think that was part of the herd message that Samsung was saying when they were providing software updates for 7 years for all their hardware. Now, the converse question to that is your refrigerator going to last for 7 years given the current return rates? But different story, different day.
But Dave, I have a different opinion. Tesla was selling FSD for $10,000, and I'd frankly rather pay at $99 a month and see if it makes a difference, and as opposed to have the capital outlay. And so I think it depends on a product by product basis. But one of the things, the CEO of Aura was speaking there, and Aura's got 1 million users globally. Look at Deborah, we're twins. Woo!
Not Aura, but I've got a bunch.
Exactly. But Aura has a subscription model.
I just have my wedding ring.
Yeah, I got one of those too. But many of Aura's competitors, their selling point is we don't charge you every month, or we charge you 99 cents, not I forget what Aura charges, not whatever Aura charges, which is
I think it's like $5.99.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a very interesting discussion around subscription.
I was talking to the manufacturer of a great product that wasn't at the show this year called Amp Genie, which we'll get into in another show. But, we were specifically talking about he developed this product in a way so that it would work with Sonos and it would work with the other services like Spotify. And I said, I don't use those services. How could you possibly not use them? I said, when I want music, I buy the CD so that I make sure the artist is compensated. I don't rent things that I can buy. Same thing, my version of Microsoft software is not Microsoft 365. It's the last one that they sent, whatever it was, 2019, 2021. I don't even remember, that I can install and use at no cost, because again, I'm not going to rent what I can buy. So that's just, my own little bailiwick.
Yeah, David, my research shows that you are very, very much in the minority there.
That would go right in line with how I see myself as well. Did anybody else get a chance to go to the IEEE booth and make their album cover that they were producing?
Oh, wow.
Talk about their stuff. If you didn't, you lost an opportunity. I'm really excited about what the IEEE is starting to do and how loud they're starting to get at these shows.
That looks downright electric, David.
Exactly. It was an AI version of a CD cover, and CD tells more about what's going on, so that's cool. All right, 1 or 2 sentence takeaways from the show. What's your high level concept? And Deborah, I think we're starting with you first, right? Going back in the other direction.
Perfect. So I think we're going into this day and age. I'll end where I started, where we're starting to see innovation from the inside out, really from the chip companies, and I think that they were incredibly clear in their message, going back to some of these diluted messages from others, very clear about what they're doing, the time frame with which they're doing it, and to basically hold them accountable. And I think to see that all at once from all of them was really interesting. And I do think that, whether it's enterprise or consumer, they're listening to these companies in different ways. So I think we're about to see, number one, a change in influence from the chip companies in terms of innovation. Number two, going back to, I think we're going to a big supply chain cycle. And number three, when it comes to form factor, I think there's an incredible amount of interest in glasses and what they can do and how they can do it. But if I'm getting teleprompted in the middle of an exam, how do universities and other educational institutions know that? That remains to be seen.
Okay, that wasn't 1 sentence, but I'll let you go because I like you. One quick thing though. Do you plan on going back to CES next year?
Oh, absolutely. I'd probably plan my time differently based on this conversation. And there was FOMO, but in a different way. So absolutely going back, but probably plan my time differently.
Doug, what about you? One high-level takeaway in a sentence or two, and are you going back?
I think that I am embracing AI drunk and waiting for us to migrate to AI sober. And I'll underline that because we're seeing AI taxes in the form of there's all this AI washing, number one. And number two is the fact that AI is starting to suck down chips. And I saw today it's also starting not only memory chips, but it's also starting to suck down storage as well.
Okay, so I forgot to ask you, Deborah, how can someone get in touch with you if they want more information?
Sure. Coresite.com is probably CORESIGHT.com.
Awesome. And Doug, what about you? How can someone reach out to you if they want to find out?
dmohney139@gmail.com. Just email me or look me up on LinkedIn.
Works for me. Avi, what's your big takeaway from CES this year?
That CES is still relevant, both in the outward facing, we're showing off new products. There were a lot of cool new products, including like new prototype rollable laptops from Lenovo that looked really great. But also that it's relevant just in bringing people into the same place at the same time. I had some really tremendous high-level meetings that sometimes went down into the weeds with all the vendors that were at the show, on the silicon side, on the devices side, on the software side even. And you can't get that necessarily by just having individual vendor events across the calendar. So yes, I will absolutely be back next year, and I'll probably plan my time about the same. I had a good show.
And how can somebody find out what you do?
I'm at techsponential.com.
Awesome, Avi. Thanks very much. And I'll totally echo your comments. This is one of my favorite finds this year, an Amazfit watch. It does everything I ever wanted the watch to do. And I ran into the manufacturer at one of the shows. It was great. We started talking about things. Jim, what about you? Well, what's your big high-level takeaway?
Well, I will be there next year. I've been going for more than 20 years and used to go to Comdex before it. I'm kind of like a CES junkie. I just love it. It's like a kid in a candy store for me. One takeaway, which is just a personal insight, is we have to move from FOMO to JOMO, joy of missing out. Like the show is so big that you can't see it all. And so if you're coming for the first time, I'd say be really highly strategic about what's most important to you and chase that and give up on the rest and enjoy, as opposed to being, when I was younger, I used to think, I have to get everywhere. No, give up on it.
Can't do it. How can somebody reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you?
Jim@jimharris.com.
Tim, what's your big one-sentence takeaway from the show?
AI drunk.
AI drunk.
Yeah, AI drunk.
Yeah, get AI drunk.
And then tell everybody how to reach out to you if they need you.
You can reach me at aviation.tv. That's aviation.tv.
And that's it for our show this week. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back next week with another one. Won't be as long as this one. We'll see you then. Take care.